So tell us, all of us about like how was it, how did you create this idea? How was the process of coming up with the idea of two, and how was it? How did it go?
Yeah, so to start from the very beginning, at USC, at USC, we all have our major. So Dimitri and I and all our friends, we were in the production program. So, but that doesn't mean that you have to do only that. You can do other, SCA has other departments. They have a game department, they have an animation department. So you can take classes in these different departments. That's what I was doing. I was taking animation classes just because I've been very interested in animation. So it all started with that. I took a couple motion capture classes, and we can talk in more detail about motion capture. But I took two motion capture classes, and I was making these projects, these little projects. They were VR projects actually, and using the technology. And after that, I wanted to make a normal film, like a narrative, 3D animated film. So that's how this came to be. And I took a class for it. I took a class just to make it, because at USC you need to be taking classes to be able to use the facilities. So, and the class was sort of an animation thesis class. So that meant that I could do just whatever kind of short film I wanted to do. And then I had to actually find the idea, because I didn't have the idea. It was after winter break. All winter break, I thought about what kind of movie I could do. And we came to school, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. But then, so this whole animation and motion capture technology, it kind of gives you certain limitations. Especially for me, I'm a production student, I do live action film. I'm not really, I don't really have many animation skills at all. So that kind of meant that I actually couldn't do whatever I wanted to do. So with motion capture, it had to be one character, because I just didn't have much time. I was also doing all these other production related live action films.
Because you were, as a DP, you were shooting
Yeah.
other people's films,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I was shooting a couple of thesis films and all kinds of other things that semester. So
Was it what is it, last spring, last fall? What was it? Last spring, right?
it was, so I graduated last spring.
Oh, so it was the fall of the 2018?
So I think so. I'm just,
Okay. Okay, no worries. All right, go on.
anyway. So yeah, I knew it had to be just one character. It couldn't be like a whole bunch of characters, or it couldn't feature any crowds or anything. So motion capture, capturing the face is really, really hard. So I knew it had to be, the character shouldn't have a face. So what doesn't have a face and can be alone? It's a robot, of course. So I picked a faceless robot, and also hands. Hands are also hard to capture all the fingers. So this robot, as you can see, it really fits my limitations. It has no face that I needed to animate. It has basically no hands, and I didn't worry about his two clamps anyway. And then, so where can a lonely robot be that I didn't have to build a whole entire city? And of course, it's space.
Okay.
So I could put my lonely robot in space, and no one would be like, why is there a lonely robot here? So it just makes sense. So it kind of started with that. And at first, I was imagining to have this robot in a spaceship, like, and then one day he gets a message, and he starts to investigate it, and then he starts revealing the secrets in the ship, kind of story. I just really like these stories where, you know, there's another layer behind the reality. It's like you think it's one thing, and then it turns out that it's not. Like a movie like Cabin in the Woods, or a game like Portal were my references for this kind of movie.
Mm-hmm.
But then I tried to make that for a little bit. I even had a little animatic, but it just didn't work. I couldn't make it work with only just one character. And I knew the ship couldn't be too much, because I had to build the ship. And we can talk about that too. And we have a teacher, Dimitri and I, called Everett, and he always says, you can't make a scene with one character. And it stuck with me, this thing he says.
I'm not sure he is right though, but okay.
I think he has a point. And
okay.
So at first, Ship's AI wasn't going to be a character. It was just going to be like a robotic AI that didn't really have emotions or didn't really interact with him. And then, so anyway, I had this idea about a robot in a spaceship revealing the ship. So I went to our friend Nick, who's the co-writer in the story. And I told him what I had in mind, and I asked him to, if he could write this story, because I honestly, I don't think I'm a good writer, and I do like collaborating with Nick, and that's what film school is for, just to find people and collaborate with them.
You know, as a side note, I invited him to join us today, but unfortunately, he said he's going to be in the like traveling from one place to another today. So,
okay.
Like his self isolation is not really there, I guess. Anyway, yeah. So you and Nick, you reached out to Nick and you asked him to write a story for you, but did you give him like, hey, I wanted this like a robot in space with somebody else with an AI, right? This is basically the everything you told him, right?
Yeah, I had a bit more of a, like, I had a bit more detailed story in mind, not too detailed, because I knew the movie also had to be around 5 minutes for me to be able to make it in one semester as a part of this class. And anyway, so he wrote a draft, and it kind of made me realize that we should really go in a different direction. And then I wanted to, then I thought we should make AI into a character. So there's more back and forth, there's more interaction, and the characters could bring stuff out of each other. So then I had this idea about these robots going towards the sun or a star for an observation mission, and then one day something happens. I think this is what I told Nick. Something happens to make the AI kind of go crazy, like mess with her circuits or whatever, and then our character would go and search for her and try to rescue her and or the ship. And then through a couple of drafts, we arrived in the story.
Right. And this, we are going to see the previews right in 1 second. I just wanted to ask one question before this. So you're just kind of giving him notes on the story, or like he was writing it, right? He's like the writer and you're like the story by.
Yeah, it was more of a story by and writing situation. I just didn't think this movie would go anywhere. I just thought I was gonna screen it at school, and that was gonna be it.
I know.
So I don't really care. But
it's like how people when somebody gets an award, people who work on the project who were not credited because they didn't care at the time, they start running around you like, hey, just get me on the list, get me in the credits.
yeah.
So yeah, this is the first previs that you did. I mean, that's not the first that you did. The first one that you are willing to share. And maybe we can just, since we're here and we're gonna come back to the story. Since we're here, maybe you can talk a little bit about like the choices that you were thinking about. Like, what are the like visual maybe components that you were experimenting with, you know, or like what is this previs served you for?
So you know, in animation, normally they do first they do like concept drawings, and then they do very detailed storyboards, and then they put those storyboards into a movie. They make a movie out of those storyboards, and then they start building the world and animating the characters. So in this one, because I didn't have much time, I just skipped all those and started at this level. And as you can see, a lot of the ideas are the same. Yeah. And some shots even I didn't change them at all, because I just didn't have time to go back and keep changing things, because in animation you can just change so much.
But I really like that for this particular shot with the turning, you put the camera under it. But
yeah,
I really like that you didn't keep the spinning one.
Yeah, so I mean, and this previs, you know, I would show these to people, and just people wouldn't understand it at all, just what's going on, because you know, the robot's just like floating and there's no animation. It's just, I know it looks weird, but I was just trying to put some ideas onto film.
Right.
And this is what that is. It's just me experimenting with shots, and like how I can start the movie. This is just the first minute of the movie.
Yeah.
And the robot's supposed to, you know, be going around doing his daily things.
So, and you, like, when you were making this, you already had the story in mind, right? You already had it written, like some version of it.
Yeah, we had the script. I basically started, so at first, I don't know if we should get into that now, but the way I made this is I first started building the spaceship. So, and then this is a couple of weeks after I started building the ship, then I started putting the robot in and see how he can move through the ship and how he looks like with the ship. Sorry, what was your question? Oh yeah, so I had a script, yes. Yeah. I had the script, definitely.
Did you guys follow some story structure, or you were just like, hey, this feels great, let's just do these two characters and they're in the space?
Yeah, I don't think, I didn't have a structure in mind. I was just trying to, you know, have a story so I can make a movie. And I don't know if Nick followed the structure when he was writing it, like a 3-act structure or something, but it's just so short. You don't really need to think about structure. Like, you just show what normally happens in the ship, and then something out of normal happens. Right. And then that spurs our robot to go do something to save the situation, and then the movie ends, right? So I guess that is a structure, but it's just when it's this short, you don't really think about it that much.
Oh, I told you already that I love this particular shot a lot.
Yeah,
but
my favorite shot too. Yeah.
But since we're talking about the structure, for those of you who are joining us from other countries, there is this class that I started at SCA that is called Visual. What is it called? Visual Structure? Wait, Visual. With Bruce Block.
Bruce Block's class.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember what it's
called. Just blanked. I know that his book is called Visual Story, but but basically what this class is about is like it's about how to tell a story with visuals, and how to structure and understand what you're doing. So did you have anything that you controlled, that you like made some rules for your story, since you had the total control of the visuals, because you were not shooting it live, you were just making it all on the computer and can put the camera anywhere? So did you have anything like that?
Yeah, that's kind of one of the hard things I found about making a movie in animation, because there's really no limits to what you can do, and you can really put the camera anywhere and have any kind of lens you want and any kind of shot you want. Like, you can move, you can zoom. It's just possibilities are endless. But you know, you have to. That's why storyboards are very important in animation, because that's where you start developing your visual language. But since I didn't have that, the structure I followed is to sort of keep the robot in the middle of the frame. So, you know, in George Miller's Mad Max, it's they talk about, you know, how the action really flows, because every shot people are in the middle of the frame. So like, he made all the cameramen shoot characters that way, so he could cut from shot to shot and have it flow. So I just kind of have that kind of thing going on, but I was not really thinking about it. It's just kind of came out somehow. I don't know.
So from what I'm hearing is that you were just like, oh, I'm just making this as an exercise for a class.
Honestly, yeah, I was just trying to like use my cinematography experience and make an animated movie, and you know, it's just, I just wasn't following. I was just not doing this in the proper way at all. So I don't know if I should be talking about it, but it just you know, it's a very creative exercise to kind of try to just really, it's just freestyling. You know, when we make live action movies too, we sit down, we think about how to do it, and then we do shot lists. Because then you have other people you need to communicate this information to. But on this project, since I was just doing it alone, I didn't have anyone to like talk to about this. So I was just doing, you know, just whatever I felt like it.
You were just going with the flow, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Well, apparently it was pretty much enough for the academy. And this is something that I've been thinking about lately, is that the more you put pressure on yourself, you know, the worse the product is, because you're like all worried about like, oh, this is not going to be as good as it could be. But if you don't care, it's just, well, here you go, you're going to get an award for that. Well, this is actually pretty remarkable, because you were just letting yourself go and play, and you get to a result that is so stunning and beautiful and touching in a way. So we talked about like a lot of like visual components here, but that you didn't control. But did you have a color palette or something? Like, I know that you were, since you were thinking, if you knew that you would have a sun as a yellow kind of source of light, and maybe you had something in mind, like, oh, I'm gonna juxtapose something else to yellow.
Yeah, I thought a bit more about that aspect. So the story is that they're going towards the sun, and I always wanted to have sun in the frame somehow. Sun is like a third character in this movie, and so I was always trying to use sunlight to just have it come through the windows, or have sun in frame through the windows. It's just the menacing big bad character at the end of the road. And the other thing I wanted to do is to make this spaceship feel organic. I didn't want to, I think most of the modern space movies, they have these ships, and it's all really, you know, blue and cool and sterile. I wanted the opposite of that for this movie. And since the characters are like the AI is, I also really wanted to make her organic. I didn't want her to be like Siri kind of, oh, good morning kind of thing. And I couldn't do that expression well, but I hope you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's just, but I wanted all these things, but you know, I was a one-man team, so I couldn't build everything from scratch. So to build this ship, in order to build the ship, I had to find these assets. And when I say assets, it's like all the props, the walls, the floors, they come separately. So this room didn't exist, but all these things you see in the frame, they existed. And it was me putting them together to, you know, to my imagination of this room.
We're segueing to the next part of it, and
yeah,
it's great that we're gonna see the previs number 2 right now, which is, I would say, the version between the final and the one that we just saw. And it's great that you're talking about the assets. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about like where you found all this stuff. Like, you didn't create all of it ground up, right?
Yeah. So, you know, this is me again trying to show what I was trying to do. And so, okay, let's say this is the ship, but I didn't make this ship. I found this ship from somewhere else.
So there was a ship designed like this with the flower.
Yeah, this ship. So the first month of making this movie, I was basically searching the internet for assets that I could use. For example, I was looking for a spaceship that kind of felt a bit more organic and not modern, and I also wanted to feel kind of warm. So I found that spaceship, and if you can pause here, Dimitri.
Yeah, 1 second.
So these assets.
Yeah, this is PowerPoint, and it's not really
it's okay.
the most friendly software.
Yeah. So.
Here?
Yeah, around here is fine.
God damn it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Good.
All right.
Okay. So the interiors of the ship are completely separate from the exterior of the ship. So for the exterior, I just found that ship model, and someone made that, and someone put that on the internet, and I just bought that ship model because it kind of
you bought it.
The best ship model that fit what I was looking for.
You said you bought it?
Yeah.
How much was it?
Oh, it's very cheap. Like maybe $10-20.
Okay.
So yeah, so someone else made it, put it on the internet, and I made this movie in a game engine called Unreal, which we can talk a bit more.
Yeah, we will talk about it. Maybe we should have started talking about it a little bit earlier, but doesn't matter right now. So okay, so yeah, this is Unreal.
So Unreal has an online store where you can buy these things that people design, and they put it there, and you can buy and use it for your own projects. So I bought the ship, and then, but it didn't have the interior. So I had to find stuff that I can design the interior with. So I found this package of assets. So the walls are like, all these are separate things. Again, it's like Legos. You have a wall, you have a window, and then you can put them next to each other, and then you have a room.
So it's easy to make yourself like whatever you want, right? It's not like you have to design.
You're really limited. You're very limited to what the asset pack has, because nothing else looks like this particular asset pack. So it was very important to find something that had most of the things I wanted and that fit in what I wanted it to look like. And then it also had to fit with all the other assets. So the interior of the ship, these walls and windows and everything had to look like they belong to the ship that we see, because they're just separate things. And then the robot also had to fit in this world, etc., etc. That was the hard part. That was like the production design and the concept design and the visual development all put together. That me looking for these assets on the internet, that's what I did as like sort of look development for this film.
Right. It took you a lot of time, I guess, to do that, right?
Yeah, you have to.
How much time would you say like you spend on just researching and developing all this stuff?
Maybe a week looking through all the spaceship assets that I could buy and use, and probably a few weeks to a month to design these locations, design the interiors, put them together.
Did you draw a plan on paper first, or just like
no, no, not at all. I just didn't
really?
have time to do all that. So I read the script, right? And when you're reading a script, you imagine, or a book, you imagine the location and how it looks like. And I didn't have time to like sit down and really think about it. I just had that imagination, and then I just made it depending on that. I just didn't think, oh, is this too big? How does this fit into like other locations? I just didn't have time. So
right. I see you had a lot of shit here on the floor that you got rid of eventually.
Yeah, I did. Just because it's also a technical thing that I wasn't at that time. I wasn't that great in using the game engine. So I wanted this scene, I wanted it to be in zero gravity. But can you play it further? Maybe it has my 0G tries. Should be after this shot.
Oh yeah, he's got a twist. Yeah, what is that?
Yeah.
They had this was funny.
Yeah, let's see.
Actually, I love this shot, but I know that this is
this is what I turned off the gravity for this shot in the game engine, but this is what the robot looked like. I just couldn't have him like open his arms and move normally. So that was it for my 0G imagination. I just couldn't do it. But it's in the end, it's okay.
Yeah, I think so too. So too. So what would you say was the most challenging for you that you didn't actually expect it to be?
Yeah, the challenging thing was, I was so happy to be able to have all this freedom to shoot it however I wanted. But when you have so much choice, it's just hard to actually pick the right thing to do. So you have to you have to kind of put limitations on yourself. And this comes back to the visual language of, how I can shoot this, how I can make it seem like it's one movie, and every shot belongs in that movie. And there's a flow from scene to scene. So that was kind of hard to figure out at first, because in the 3D software, you're just a floating camera that you can drag anywhere and look. You can you can do whatever you want in terms of movement too. So that was kind of hard to figure out how I actually wanted to do this movie. Besides all the technical things I had to figure out, of course, like you see the sparks and the fire there.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, for example, those are things I bought those too. Like you can buy these sort of VFX things, the sparks and the fire.
I guess you could hire somebody to do it for you.
Yeah, or you could, but they're not expensive. Yeah. They're really not. And the game engine, I could have made that in the game engine if I had time, and I could have followed the tutorials and I could have made that. But it's just like, it's like a director. I was directing and I was making it. So I just couldn't make everything. And no one really, in animation world too, no one really makes everything. It's a team effort. So my team here was just random strangers on internet that made these things and put it online. So I see them as the team.
But I remember that when I was in the cinematography class, that you were student assistant, and I remember that you already were using Unreal. I remember talking to you about it, and it was 2 years ago, almost.
Yeah.
So you took this class, and you did this movie already having some experience in Unreal.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe this is a good moment to just, for those of us, of our guests who have no idea what this thing is and been waiting for to hear about the virtual production, maybe you can give a couple lines about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So Unreal is a Unreal Engine 4 it's the whole name. It's a game engine, and what that means is people use this software to make games. So the game engine is where most things are compiled and organized in. So they build for example, we have a robot character, right? You don't build this robot character in the game engine. You build it on a different software, and then you put the textures on it, all the colors, and the arms, the plating on the robot. You put the colors and the textures in another software, and then you animate the robot in another software, and then everything comes together in the game engine to make this final product. So the game engine is not it doesn't specialize in anything really in terms of animation workflow, but it does a little bit of everything, and that's why people use it in virtual production, because you can bring all these things you make in other software, you bring into the game engine, and the game engine can read and interpret everything, and then it has the lighting and camera. That's also what it does. It has all these systems to build your lighting and to film your 3D world. So
did you use like Blender or Cinema 4D? What did you use?
No, again, I was
or you were just like finding this stuff online and just
I was just finding stuff online, just trying to customize it. Like in the game engine, you can't really, if I wanted to retexture, put other kind of surfaces on this robot, I just can't do that. Mm-hmm. But I could like hide certain things and change certain colors. Like the robot normally didn't have the 2 on his forehead.
Yeah.
Well, for example, I put that
as we saw in the previews. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can do limited adjustments in the game engine. So that's what I was doing.
I wanted to ask you about the shot that is going to come next, and sorry to jump to a little bit another subject, but I figured that you chose to stay on this shot from behind because you didn't want to animate his claws or whatever they are when he's like putting the wand into his chest, right?
Yeah, it's just I mean, so much of this movie is me trying to hide stuff. And this shot is one of the examples, and in this shot he's trying to, using the cables, he's trying to attach the AI onto his body, but I just couldn't, like, the cables and the physics, they're just really hard to do. So I really had no other choice to do this. I just couldn't show it, so I just filmed it from the back, and you just
left it to our imagination.
And like, I didn't really. Interesting thing is, I just didn't have anyone telling me that, like, I wanted to see him cabling the AI. It's just, it's not the point of the
Yeah, of course.
movie anyway. You can get away with so many things. And I mean, if you watch the movie again after this talk, you'll see that you never see robot actually doing things with his hands. You just never do. He's working on a pipe, and before that he's working on a wall paneling and putting it back, but you'll never see his hands because I just didn't want to animate that.
Right. So yeah, and going back to the Unreal Engine. So you've been working in it for quite some time, and do you think this is going to be something that you will pursue later in your life, in your career? You want to develop this?
Yeah, definitely. So there are two game engines. One is called, two popular ones that people use. One is Unity and one is Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine has really taken off for virtual production. They have all kinds of tools, and they have really great PR concerning that. So they're really popular in that area. And virtual production now, so maybe we should explain what we mean when we say virtual production.
Please go ahead. Do you want me to pull up the BTS from Mandalorian or something?
Yeah, so virtual production, they just use it, they just mean that it's you still have these tools you use for live action. You still have cameras and lights and actors, but it's all virtual. So actors, they get recorded with motion capture systems. And for example, this robot, I have captured him on a mocap stage. It's just a friend of mine acting like a robot.
We're gonna see it in a second.
Yeah, so that's also because I didn't want to animate the robot by hand. That it just takes much longer. So you record your actors, and then you can film your scene. You build this 3D world. You put your character into the world, and then with virtual cameras in the game engine that act like normal cameras. You can change the sensor size, you can change the lens, you can change the aperture. You just film your movie or your game or whatever it is. So that's
I guess your experience as a cinematographer was really, really helpful there, because you're like, you know how to make images, so you know what you control.
It just translates. It's because it's still production, even though it's virtual. It's still production. And one important aspect of virtual production is that you can use real world tools to control the camera in the engine. Just like how you're using real actors to control virtual characters, you can also use gadgets on stage to control virtual cameras. So you can, for example, I have this water bottle, right? So I could put some tracking markers on this water bottle and attach this to my virtual camera. So when I move this bottle, my virtual camera moves. You can do that with anything. And I did that with this movie. We had a shoulder rig on stage. So the second half of the movie where the camera is shaking and it looks like handheld.
It is handheld, huh?
It's because it is handheld. That was me operating the camera on stage, and then seeing how the virtual camera moved and what my shot looked like exactly as I was operating. And this is just us recording. You can see those little dots on my friend. Those are the tracking markers, and that's how all these blue circular things in the background, those are infrared cameras. So they track these markers, and the software interprets it as, as a human. There are certain placements for these markers. Again, the software can tell you where to put them, and then so that it can capture a human and then put his movements onto a character. Yeah, basically.
No, this is really great. The great thing for me is that you can actually combine these two worlds of like real production, like live production, and virtual production, because they have the same tools, because one grew out of another in a way, which is yeah, this is great, man.
Yeah, and virtual production is just, especially these days, it's just really taking off, because you can do things remotely. You can you know, you don't need a 100-person crew on set. You can just, you know, this is just me and my friend, literally.
Well, imagine owning a virtual production studio, like a stage like this one during a pandemic. You know, you can just go there and shoot movies.
Yeah, and
like 3 people, and they're just like everything.
the thing is, you don't even need a whole stage full of, you know, 50 or 100 cameras. This stage would cost millions of dollars. But there are things that you can use to really make this movie at home. Like, there are motion capture suits that don't require trackers and cameras.
Wow.
They can just record. They have things to record your movements in the suit itself. So anyone can wear the suit and move, and then the suit will record. And then you can use your phone streaming into the game engine to record camera, like record handheld camera. So they also, I mean, of course they have their limitations. All these systems, whether it's, you know, optical motion tracking, like this one you see on the screen, or, you know, all the other things you can do at home, they all have their limitations, and they all have their pros and cons. But it's really, you can do this at home.
Yeah.
You just have to know, you just have to have that bit of technical knowledge.
Yeah, we have about a couple slides left. This is from obviously from recording the music. Did you have a composer from UC doing that?
Yeah. My composers, one of them is in the stage conducting, and the other is with the green shirt. They just worked together on this project, and they really did a great job, really.
That's
and
cool.
This is the sound mix.
I mean, for those of you guys who joined us, this is all on at school. All these facilities are SCA, right? I mean, not this one, I guess. This is a music school of next to us, and this is Neve.
Yeah, this is
voice of
the AI.
AI.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it was just this one recording. Like, we just recorded everything in an hour, and that was it.
Just one take?
Yeah, no, not most. Actually, there's this thing. There's someone helping us on stage to record her voice, and at the end she said we should do another go where I don't interrupt her. She just goes through the script and you know, just reads her lines one by one without stopping. And most of the lines in the movie I've used from that take that we did, like in the last minute of this hour of recording. It's interesting.
That's cool. All right, I think we've reached the end of the presentation that I have prepared, but I would love to open up for the questioning from the audience, from anybody. If you want guys to ask any question, you can raise your hand using the raise hand function, or you can just type it in the chat section. So there was one from almost an hour ago. Have you ever tried anything movie related while undergrad? I think you answered that question, right?
Yes. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I took a couple classes, and, you know, very, very small little short films or music videos or anything. You just got to start. You just got to start doing and filming things. And
right.
Yeah.
Somebody named Nico is telling us visual storytelling. I actually remember the name of the class. It's called Visual Expression. Visual Story is the name of the book. Can you talk a little bit more about the shift?
Yeah. I think, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay, so I was always interested in film, but I just never practiced it. I did have a DSLR camera in college I just started to learn, the basics of exposure, how to use your digital camera with the aperture and shutter speed, and putting those photos in the computer and doing some corrections on them, etc. So I was just basically very amateur photo taking person. And then it's just this film stuff was always on the back of my mind. I just really loved watching them, but I never again tried to make them. And then it's just depends if you have the freedom to practice it. If you do it at school, it just helps you sort of have that protective layer around you that you can just go out and do things. And then if you do it in a class, that means that someone will watch the movie, and hopefully someone that knows what they're talking about, and then they'll tell you sort of, they can guide you, they can tell you what's working and what's not working and how to think about these things and what else you can do. And after that, working in film is all about, I graduated, Dimitri has also graduated, right?
I mean, I have my thesis left, but
yeah, so mostly graduated. So it's just, I graduated last year in December. So and then it just, they tell you these things that diploma don't matter, but when you get out, you really understand that it really doesn't matter. Really doesn't matter where you graduated from, what you've studied. It just has no connection whatsoever to how you can find work. So it's all about who you know and who can get you jobs, who can get you on set. So, I don't want to, everyone talks about networking, but it's true. You just have to know people. And for example, my first job after graduation was in virtual production. And the way I found that job, I was an Unreal Engine tech for a very big budget virtual production. It was a blockbuster superhero movie. And then the way I found that is a friend of mine a year ago connected me to another friend who works in virtual production. And this person saw a post on LinkedIn, and he sent that post to me. And the post was just looking for, it was just a virtual production supervisor saying that he's looking for someone that has this skill. And that person knew I've been doing virtual production, and I knew how to do those things. And then he just sent me that LinkedIn post, and then I just reached out and I was hired. That's really how it works. And I was hired after one phone interview, like 15 minutes.
Wow. So you're saying that by the way, I wanted to ask you about this, like what your job right now is and what you're doing. So you're saying that you were hired to this huge thing, not because of but because of people you knew, or people knew you.
Yeah, two kind of helped, because then it kind of helped. I wouldn't say it's because of two, because again, my supervisor didn't watch two. It was just like that. The person who sent me that post knew about two, and it's just it's just reference matters, right? If that person didn't refer me to the supervisor on this job, and sort of vouched for my abilities, I wouldn't have gotten the job. So it really, you just need to, reach out to people and, cold emails, hot emails, just do whatever you can do to sort of put yourself out there, I guess.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know what cold emails are, it's like cold phone calls when they're not solicited, right? They're just, nobody's expecting them. You just reach out to people that you find on IMDb. Nico is asking, are you stoked about the Unreal 5 that just came out, or it's coming out, and all this kind of stuff? How much time does it take to master Unreal for virtual production?
Yeah, so I did see the announcement, and it's pretty amazing, but it's gonna come out sometime next year. So it's a little far now, but yeah, I watched it a few times, and yes, I'm very excited about it. And you know, it's just, so the reason we use these game engines is that, so games have to be running real time, right? You can't ask the gamer to press a button and then wait for 5 seconds while you render this beautiful world. You just have to, the world has to be running 24, at least 30 frames per second, at least 30 times per second, if not more. So that's why, that's where the real time, that's why virtual production can only be done in game engines, because, or some software that's similar. You just have to do it real time. You just can't wait for it to render. The reason why we use game engines is they now reach the quality, the visual quality that was just impossible maybe 10, 15 years ago. They have this, now they come very close to photoreal. Even Unreal Engine 4 has really photoreal little films that they made. And the longer this technology, the real-time technology develops, the more you can, so let's say, for example, a Pixar movie, one frame in those movies can take days to render, at least hours, but sometimes it takes days. So as this technology develops and we get closer to photoreal imagery and you know, simulation of light and particles like water or sand or whatever it can be, the better the end product will look. And maybe 10, 20 years later, you'll be able to achieve Pixar level quality at your home. That's what it's going towards, basically. And let me see what else they were asking.
How much computing power?
How much does it take to master Unreal? You don't have to master the whole Unreal. That's really impossible unless you have a few years to work on it full time. You just need to know a little bit of everything, because right now, so none of these tools are specific that we use are specifically made for virtual production. It's just appropriated from other areas in animation for virtual production purposes. So you got to know a little bit of animation first before you start messing around in Unreal. Like if you're doing motion capture, or even if you're using other animations that people captured and you're buying them off the internet and you want to put them on your characters, you still need to know sort of how to do that. So there's a fundamental level of animation knowledge that you have to know. And then Unreal is not that hard, but again, they don't really have these tools. It's just not, currently it's not a package that you can just like install on your computer and get to work. You just have to know, you just have to do a little bit of setup. And you know, Unreal has these things called blueprints. It's a visual programming language. You have to know a little bit of that. All in all, I made this, so I used Unity for my undergrad thesis, let's say for a semester. And then I came to, Unity is the other game engine. And I came to USC and I used Unreal for a year before I made this movie. So all in all, I had about a year and a half of, and not full-time at all, like very, very part-time, sort of whenever I can find time kind of work in Unreal. So, I mean, during this quarantine, basically, you've had 3 months and maybe let's say a couple more months you'll be at home, you can learn most things that you need to know to do virtual production. And
okay, let's not put pressure on everybody until start learning, you know, like how everyone is right now trying to be productive and
yeah, well,
but
you could.
but it makes sense, totally makes sense, of course.
Yeah, like, so let's say a few months of full-time work and you'll be good to go.
Yeah.
And then computing power, it does take a little bit of computing power. It just depends on how, you know, how good and real you want your things to look. If you don't care about it, if you're doing like a cartoony movie, then not much at all. You can run it on a laptop, even though it's hopefully a modern laptop. But if you want it to look very real, if you want the lighting to be really nice, then you do need to have a powerful PC.
Okay, since we're on this subject, let's jump one question ahead and then come back to the Netflix one. So what programs do you need to make 3D models? Can you just quickly cover this?
Yeah, so again,
like
I didn't do any of the models or textures or anything in this movie, but you can do, so the models you can make in Maya or ZBrush, depending
Can you use Cinema 4D or Blender?
Yeah, Blender is a free software. Maya is not. Autodesk Maya is not free if you're not a student. Blender is, you can make it in Blender. You can texture in, again, 3ds Max is not free for non-students, and Blender can do most of these things for free. And for other stuff, again, you get into Maya or ZBrush and Substance Painter and you know, Quixel Mixer for doing textures and surfaces. There are just a lot of programs that you could learn.
Okay, okay. I think we have a couple more questions that are a little bit off kind of the topic, but can you quickly talk about like what is your perspective since you were already out of education? What is your perspective on employment in things like Netflix and selling scripts? Maybe if you know anything about it.
Oh, Netflix, Netflix has normal jobs, not just for creators to pitch their projects. They also have a virtual production department, and they have an animation department. And every now and then I do look at Netflix careers website. You can find it very easily. I don't know if it's a good place to work. I just don't know anyone who works there, but I know, like, I would, if they asked me, I would go, I guess. That's what I can say about it.
But do they actually have production people, or because what
Yeah,
is?
I think they're doing in-house production.
Okay.
At least for animation, they definitely do. And they're hiring animators and people with similar skills. I just didn't see any virtual production jobs recently.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure.
Okay.
After Effects, Premiere Pro. Yeah, I did use Premiere in this project. So it's editing in Unreal is hard. So the way I did it is I rendered all the shots, every shot to a single file, and then all these shots go into Premiere where I edit the movie.
Did you edit yourself?
Yeah, I edited it myself, yeah. After Effects, I don't think I used it in this one, but yeah, After Effects, like, it's really used in animated film because you know, if you need to do compositing or other kinds of visual effects that are harder to do in Unreal, or sometimes you just don't need, if you want to just fake things, it's good to know After Effects, because let's say you want it to snow, right? And if you don't want to deal with snow, like making snow or finding snow in Unreal, maybe you can get away with like just putting some snow effect on After Effects, for example. So it's useful.
What do you do in virtual production Blockbuster?
Okay, so this job was, it was a superhero movie, and we were doing.
You cannot talk about it right now, right?
Not really, but
Okay.
I mean,
you cannot say the
yeah,
name.
it's just on pause,
Okay.
or it's probably not canceled. But anyway, I was laid off when the virus hit. But my job was, we were doing virtual production for previs of this movie. So, you know, in superhero movies, they have all these effects and all the action scenes and, you know, tons of money that goes into it. So now with virtual production getting popular, they started, it used to be that previs is just like the director and a couple guys on the computer trying to animate some characters in a like this gray world, because, you know, the computing power wasn't there to like really build your sets nicely in the computer. So it just used to be, previs was a gray characters running around in gray worlds. But now with virtual production being what it is, they set up a virtual production stage, and we were doing, so the director was coming and the actors, not the real actors, but some actors were motion capturing the characters, and they were gonna, you know, play out the scenes, and the cinematographer comes in, and after recording, they shoot the scenes, and their locations are built similarly to what they're gonna have in the actual production. And we had all these tools for the cinematographer to shoot their movie, you know, again, like putting markers on things on stage so they get tracked into the virtual world, or mechanized heads, like let's say there's a tripod head that they've put trackers in the tripod head, so that when you operate the tripod, it operates the camera just like it was on a tripod in the virtual world. So anyway, we had tools like that so they could shoot their movie with virtual production and have a very high fidelity previs, basically. And careers are kind of like this. So for virtual production right now, we don't just use Unreal. We also use Motion Builder. It's another Autodesk software, and yeah, and there's other software for motion capture cameras and setting those up and tracking the data, but that's a little bit more technical, and you can't really learn that at home. You need to learn it on a stage. But Motion Builder and Unreal can get you employed. Like my job in Unreal was to set these scenes up and making sure all the tools work together, and, you know, build some tools if anyone needs something that the game engine doesn't have. So again, you can launch Unreal and start learning how to build things with blueprints, and like a little bit of animation knowledge can get you employed.
All right. I think we've reached the end of our meeting. Thank you so much, Emre. I don't see any new comments. Recommend some good tutorials in the end.
Tutorials. Let me think. Honestly, okay. I think the best way is that you should pick a project that you want to do. Let's say, just pick a short film that you want to do. A short film about two balls, two spheres, and like they can't come within 6 feet of each other or they die, but they're sort of chasing each other, etc. So go make this movie. Don't watch tutorials. When you're trying to make this movie, and when you're like, oh, how does a camera work? Then Google that, and, you know, tons of stuff will pop up, so that you can learn a specific thing about what you want to do that you have to apply later to make your movie. And I found that this is the best way to learn. Because if you just sit down and watch like a playlist of tutorials, it might not stick that well in your head. So pick a short film project if you're interested in virtual production, or whatever you want to make, and then start.
That's a great advice. That's a great advice. Maybe you can give, as the last thing, maybe you can give some advice to people that are trying to get in the film.
Yeah. So again, it's who you know. So if your school has like a cinema club, or doesn't have to be school related either. Like if it has a film production major, or if your school doesn't have it, like the way I kind of started working in film back in Turkey is that I had a friend who studied in another film school. So I contacted him and saying like, oh, I've gotten into doing film production, and I do, I like cinematography. Is there anyone that are looking for cinematographers? And they were. So I shot a bunch of student films back there, even though, I graduated from computer science and I just didn't have anything. But it's just important. It's just important that you want to do it, and you're there and you're trying your best. So, just start by reaching out to people, and start picking, if you have a camera, that's great. So you can start learning things. If you don't have a camera, do it on your phone. Just start taking photos. But I think a camera helps, even though you can do it on your phone. The phone just doesn't have a lot of elements that a camera and lens would have. So yeah, pick a camera, start learning that, and reach out to people either in your college or in other schools. Get into clubs, and yeah.
Thank you so much, Emre. Before we all go, I just wanted to say that if you guys want to support this thing and this channel and my blog, you can help me by this link, and this link you can also find in my Telegram channel. But Emre, I am really glad that you agreed to do this, and thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
And I really hope that this was not the last, but only the first award that you got. And we will see all your great films in the future, soon, very soon.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Okay, thank you everybody, and you guys in Moscow have a great night, and you, Emre, have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, bye bye everybody.